So here it is, the review for Dragon Ball Super Episode 3. And this episode was solid, sorta. Yeah, I'll be getting into why it's sorta in a bit. This episode more or less retells like the first 10-ish minutes of Battle of Gods. We have Beerus rambling about the Super Saiyan God, we have the Kaioshiins rambling about Beerus, and we have the start of Bulma's birthday party. It's basically just a longer, more drawn-out version of those scenes from Battle of Gods, with some slight variations to the dialogue. The only major difference is that Bulma's birthday party, instead of being held in Capsule Corp, is now being held on a boat. So yeah, that's the summary. Let's just go ahead and move straight on to the positives from this episode. First off, there's some added dialogue from Elder Kaioshin about how Beerus was the one that's trapped him in the Z-Sword. Now, this was something that Toriyama had stated in an interview, and everyone considered, it is canon. But honestly, I really don't care about anything that Toriyama says in interviews, because to be honest, Toriyama says a lot of shit in interviews, a lot of which just doesn't make fucking sense. So to me, anything Toriyama just says off the top of his fucking head does not count until it shows up in a show, a movie, a manga, something. So that was cool to actually see that referenced in this episode. Next up, this episode has some fantastic character moments, some really good slice of life moments. I really enjoyed seeing Kuririn and 18 just, kind of being a couple, being a family. That's something we really didn't get to see in Z. In fact, the only time we ever really got to see anything like that was really just in GT. So it's always great to see more of that. Also, there's this fantastic little scene where Chaozu, makes funny faces at Marin, and Marin giggles, and you get this nice little smile from number 18. And it's a really cute, heartwarming scene with these characters that we don't really get that kind of interaction from. Also, that scene is probably the most interesting Chaozu has been ever. We also get this fantastic scene of Gohan giving Piccolo a wedding photo. It is just adorable. I love it. I fucking love that scene. It's such a tiny scene, it really is. But once again, it's things we don't get to see from these characters. And actually getting to see just a small snippet of their wedding was fan-fucking-tastic. I loved it. Another thing I really liked about this episode was the scene with the Oracle Fish. When he shows up in Battle of Gods, he's just like, I don't remember, I guess I kinda told you about a prophecy. And it was just a really weird execution of that idea. Here in Super, he's just like, oh yeah, I totally told you about that prophecy, about the Super Saiyan God. So it actually makes a lot more sense, and it makes Beer's prophetic dream a lot less stupid. And that pretty much sums up all the positive things I have to say. Now it's time to board the Nitpick Express. Toot toot. And talk about the negatives. They did it again! They fucking did it again with the flashbacks and showing me the old animation! Those motherfuckers stopped doing it! And the worst part was they showed me a fucking scene that didn't even make any goddamn sense! Now my issues with this are twofold. First off, we see Kaio's planet getting destroyed and they never explain how it came back. I mean, Battle of Gods kind of glosses over that, but I really wish they would have touched on it in this episode of Super, considering they fucking brought it up. Secondly, Kaio goes on a fucking hissy fit about how he wasn't wished back when in Dragon Ball Z and in the Dragon Ball manga, in that scene at the end of the Cell fight, Goku says that Kaio chose to not be wished back to life, so that way he could stay and follow Goku around. He chose to stay dead. Why is he bitching about being dead? He could have been wished back in that moment and chose not to. You'd think someone writing these scripts would have double-checked that shit. And while I'm on the topic of flashbacks, they do a flashback of the Frieza fight. And it's done in new animation. They didn't, use old footage like they've been doing. God damn it, show one or the other. Don't do some new animation for flashbacks and just keep rehashing the old animation. Even though I don't like the look of the new animation, just fucking just use the new animation. Just fucking reanimate it. At least that way I can get some goddamn visual consistency. And speaking of visual consistency, this episode was kind of animated like shit. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but fuck, this shit was off model a lot. I actually thought the first two episodes looked alright. This episode looked pretty shitty. Now, I should really bring up the elephant in the room with this episode, and that is, because this episode is retelling the beginning of Battle of Gods, there really isn't anything new here. And it's doing it in a more dragged out fashion. And I already noticed that this is becoming a point of contention with a lot of fans. This series does not exist in a vacuum. Battle of Gods exists. We've already seen it. We already know where this storyline is going. So it really feels like this series is dragging its ass. But you have to look at it this way, they are retelling Battle of Gods. So yeah, it needs to kind of be done this way. It needs to tell this story as if Battle of Gods the movie never fucking existed. When future generations are watching Dragon Ball, they're gonna watch Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and then Super, and they're probably going to see Super before they see Battle of Gods and Fukatsu no F. So Dragon Ball Super needs to stand alone as its own thing. It can't take storytelling shortcuts just because the story's already been told once before. In all honesty, the pacing for this episode isn't bad at all. In fact, it's a really well-paced episode in my opinion. The only thing that makes the pacing of this show seem like utter shit is because the first 2 episodes didn't do a goddamn thing, and now this episode is rehashing material from Battle of Gods. The thing is, the first 2 episodes didn't need to fucking exist, is the problem. If Dragon Ball Super pretty much started with this episode, introducing the storyline with this framework, I don't think people would have had a problem. But we did have 2 episodes of goddamn nothing. So people are starting to get a little fucking fed up that we still have nothing in this series. So honestly, don't blame them rehashing this fucking material. Blame them on dragging ass on those first 2 episodes that you guys are so vehemently defending. As of right now, I'm a little bit more on board with this series, but that doesn't mean it's good or what it's doing is really okay. I still think the pacing is pretty goddamn slow, mostly because of those first 2 goddamn episodes. And I'm worried that the pacing isn't going to be improved in the next few episodes. Who knows though, I could be completely fucking wrong, and this series could completely blow my mind. It hasn't yet, it's 3 episodes in, shit really needs to start moving. Yeah, and that's my review for episode 3. It was... alright. And this episode wouldn't have been so bad if it hadn't been preceded by 2 episodes that didn't do a goddamn thing, and if it hadn't been rehashing material that we already seen in a movie. That being said though, I'd actually have to say this is probably the most solid episode of Dragon Ball Super so far, which is really sad when I say it out loud. Well, whatever. I'm Zeon. Peace.